For centuries, this was where every big question got its answer. Then a new voice rose up to take its place. It promised proof, even when the proof was a forgery. But the deeper science dug, the bigger the questions became. So here's the question, asked in a whole new way. Does science point to God? A century ago, in the early 1900s, a new wave began to spread across the Western world. Religion was increasingly treated like leftover furniture from an old house, something people kept around out of habit, not conviction. Science, meanwhile, was lifted up as the key that could open every locked door. If we didn't yet understand where life came from, science would find out. If we didn't yet understand where humanity came from, science would explain it. And if science could one day explain everything, then maybe, just maybe, we wouldn't need God anymore. One theory in particular became the sharpest symbol of that new worldview: evolution. Charles Darwin's book had already been circulating for decades. But by the early 20th century, its implications had grown far beyond biology classrooms. It didn't just change how people saw the origin of life. It convinced an entire generation that the questions once reserved for religion had finally found a home in the laboratory. But then, only a few decades later, one of the biggest scandals in the history of paleoanthropology broke wide open. Piltdown Man, a supposed missing link between apes and humans, once treated by scientists across Europe as landmark proof of human evolution. It turned out to be a fake, a human skull, an orangutan's jaw, filed down and chemically stained to look ancient. Bone fragments deliberately aged to pass every test available at the time. And the truly astonishing part wasn't that someone built the forgery. Widely believed today to have been assembled by an amateur archaeologist named Charles Dawson. It was that so many respected minds believed it for over 40 years. Now, here's what you need to understand. Science did not collapse because of Piltdown Man. The opposite happened. It was science, better dating methods, better testing, fluorine analysis that finally caught the forgery, that eventually exposed the fraud. But the incident left behind a lesson deeper than the hoax itself. Science carries enormous power, but the people practicing it are not incapable of being wrong. And since then, science has moved faster and farther than anyone in 1912 could have imagined. You can read the genetic code hidden inside every living cell. You can look inside the machinery of a single cell and see a level of engineering that would embarrass most factories. You can observe galaxies sitting billions of light years away, sending you light older than the human species itself. You can build artificial intelligence. You can edit DNA directly, letter by letter. You are touching secrets that earlier generations could not have even imagined asking about. But here's the strange part. The more we learn, the questions don't disappear. They get bigger. Why does the universe exist instead of nothing at all? Why can the laws of nature be described with almost eerie precision using human mathematics? Where did the information encoded in DNA actually come from? How does consciousness, the felt experience of being you, arise out of matter that, by itself, shouldn't feel like anything at all? Some of these questions, science may spend another 100 years chasing, and some of them may sit outside what the scientific method was ever built to answer. Maybe that's exactly why the conversation between science and faith feels more alive today than it has in a century. It isn't simply science versus religion anymore. It's a sharper question. What can science actually explain? And what sits beyond the edge of what science is able to know? And right at that edge, an old question is showing up wearing new clothes. Does science point to God? This is not a video trying to prove scripture with a microscope. This is not a video mocking scientists or pretending faith and evidence can't sit at the same table. This is not a video picking a side in a culture war. This is a video about the questions science keeps running into, questions it never expected, and questions it has not been able to make disappear. And it starts, appropriately enough, at the very beginning of everything. For most of scientific history, the working assumption was that the universe had simply always existed. No start, no cause required. Eternal, unchanging, and therefore something you never had to explain. Like the number 2 or the color blue. Then, in 1927, a Belgian priest named Georges Lemaitre proposed something radical. He suggested the universe was expanding, and that if you rewound that expansion far enough, you'd hit a single point. A beginning. What later became known, half-mockingly, as the Big Bang. Stay with me here because the irony is almost too on the nose. A Catholic priest with a doctorate in physics was the one who mathematically pointed back toward in the beginning. Many of his fellow scientists resisted the idea hard, not because the math was wrong, because the implications felt too close to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Albert Einstein reportedly told Lemaitre his math was correct, but called his physics abominable. Because Einstein at the time preferred a universe with no starting point. No starting point meant no uncomfortable question about what came before it or who might have caused it. But the evidence kept piling up. Leftover radiation from the early universe. Galaxies rushing apart from each other in every direction. By the 1960s, the Big Bang wasn't a fringe theory anymore. It was the leading model in cosmology, taught in every serious physics department on Earth. Here's what most people miss. The opening line of Genesis was written roughly 3,500 years ago, in a world that assumed the universe was eternal. The sun, the sky, the sea, all believed to have simply always been there. And yet Genesis opens differently, not with eternal matter, with a beginning. In Hebrew, the verb used in that very first verse is bara, a word used only for God, describing creation out of nothing. Not asa, the more common Hebrew word for shaping or forming something out of material that already exists. The text draws that line on purpose in its very first sentence, thousands of years before anyone had a telescope capable of testing it. But it gets stranger. Look at the order Genesis lays things out. Light first. Then a separation forming what we'd call atmosphere. Then land and sea, then plant life. Then the sun, moon, and stars becoming visible from the Earth's surface. Then sea creatures and birds. Then land animals. Then, last of all, human beings. For a long time, critics pointed at this sequence and laughed. Plants before the sun even shows up? That's out of order. That's what happens when Bronze Age shepherds try to write science. But modern geology and atmospheric science tell a more careful story. An early atmosphere thick with particulate matter would scatter light without a distinct sun, moon, and stars being visible from the surface, while photosynthetic life could still function under diffused light. As that atmosphere thinned, the sun, moon, and stars would appear to come out, almost exactly the way Genesis describes it. Nobody serious is claiming this proves anything with mathematical certainty. Correlation is not the same thing as a scientific paper. But the sequence lines up with modern geology and atmospheric science far more closely than a Bronze Age creation myth had any business lining up. And this is where it gets remarkable. Even if you set the sequence aside completely, there's something even harder to explain away. The universe appears to be tuned. Physicists call it the fine-tuning problem. The strength of gravity, the force holding atomic nuclei together, the rate of cosmic expansion. Dozens of constants that, if adjusted by a fraction so small, it's almost impossible to picture. Change the expansion rate by one part in a number followed by dozens of zeros would make stars, planets, chemistry, or life itself completely impossible. Physicist Fred Hoyle, an atheist by conviction, not by accident, studied the specific nuclear reaction that allows carbon to form inside dying stars. Carbon, the backbone element of every living thing you've ever known, including you. He found the numbers so precisely balanced that he later admitted the universe looked, in his own words, like a put-up job. Like someone had rigged the numbers on purpose before the first star ever ignited. He didn't become a believer, but he could not pretend the coincidence wasn't staggering. If you're still with me, that's exactly the kind of curiosity this channel exists for. Deep Genesis digs into the places where ancient text and modern discovery actually touch, without pretending the questions are simple, and without pretending they don't matter. If that's the kind of thing you want more of, consider subscribing, because it's about to get even more interesting. Here's the part nobody tells you about DNA. Every cell in your body carries a molecule that functions in every meaningful sense like a written language. 4 chemical letters: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, arranged in sequences that form instructions. Not vague chemical tendencies. Instructions. Specific, ordered, purposeful information. The same way a sentence is specific, ordered information, and not just ink randomly touching a page. Francis Collins spent 13 years leading the Human Genome Project, the effort that mapped the entire 3 billion letter code inside human DNA. He is not a fringe figure. He later became the director of the National Institutes of Health, one of the most respected scientific posts in the United States. Collins has said, plainly, that when he first read through the human genome as a young scientist, it felt like reading a message. His word, a message. Here's the question that keeps surfacing and keeps refusing to leave quietly. Real, functional, language-like information has never once been observed forming on its own from raw chemistry without an intelligent source behind it. Not in any laboratory, not anywhere. Every other code you've ever encountered, a book, a computer program, a musical score, traces back to a mind. DNA is a code too. So where did this one come from? Pay attention to this next part. Because it's where things get genuinely strange, even for scientists with no religious motivation at all. Fred Hoyle, the same physicist from the carbon discovery, turned his attention late in his career to the odds of a single living cell assembling itself by chance from raw, non-living chemistry. His conclusion became one of the most quoted lines in this entire debate. He compared the probability to a tornado sweeping through a junkyard and, by pure accident, assembling a fully functional Boeing 747. He wasn't being dramatic for effect. He ran the numbers, and the numbers embarrassed him. A single cell isn't a simple blob of goo, the way old textbooks used to imply. It's closer to a self-repairing factory, running thousands of coordinated chemical processes at once, with a built-in instruction manual telling it how to build more of itself. Take away almost any one piece, a single protein, a single pathway, and the whole system doesn't slow down. It stops. Biologists call this irreducible complexity, a system where removing any core part doesn't leave you with a weaker version. It leaves you with nothing that works at all. The bacterial flagellum, a microscopic motor that spins a cell's tail thousands of times a minute, is one of the most famous examples. Take away any one of its dozens of parts, and you don't get a slower motor. You get scrap. There's one more thing worth sitting with. Robert Jastrow was not a theologian. He was the founding director of NASA's Goddard Institute for Space Studies, an astrophysicist, not a preacher. Near the end of his career, in a book called God and the Astronomers, he wrote something that has been quoted in classrooms and pulpits ever since. He described the scientist's search for the origin of the universe as a man climbing a mountain of ignorance, about to conquer the highest peak, only to find, waiting for him at the summit, a group of theologians who had been sitting there for centuries. Jastrow wasn't converting. He was being honest about where the evidence followed all the way to the end seemed to lead. Now, remember the man from the beginning of this video. The other figure in this story, the one who wasn't a forger. For most of the 20th century, Antony Flew was one of the most influential atheist philosophers alive. Not a quiet skeptic, a public one. He spent decades constructing careful, rigorous arguments against the existence of God, teaching at Oxford, publishing work that shaped how entire generations of philosophy students thought about faith and evidence. If anyone had a reason to stay an atheist out of sheer intellectual pride, it was him. But in 2004, at 81 years old, Antony Flew did something almost nobody expected. He said he had changed his mind, not because of a personal crisis, not because of a religious experience. He was explicit about this. It was the science, specifically the complexity of DNA and the sheer improbability of life assembling itself from non-living matter that moved him. He laid it all out in a book he titled, simply, "There is a God." He didn't convert to Christianity. He didn't join a church or start reading scripture from a pulpit. He described his new position as deism, belief in an intelligent source behind the universe, without committing to any one religion's full picture of who that source is. But think about what that means for a moment. One of the most rigorous anti-God philosophers of the last 100 years looked at the same evidence you've been hearing about for the last several minutes and concluded that pure chance could no longer carry the weight. This is not a story about scripture defeating philosophy in a debate. This is not a story about religion winning an argument science lost. This is a story about a man who followed the evidence all the way to wherever it actually led, even when it led somewhere he never planned on going. You can go stand outside tonight, away from city light, and look up. Somewhere around 3,000 years ago, a poet wrote this line: "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims the work of his hands." No telescope, no satellite data. Just a man, a dark sky, and a conclusion that modern astrophysics has never quite managed to fully argue away. Piltdown Man was never real evidence. It was a costume built to look like proof, and it fooled people for 40 years. But carbon fine-tuned inside dying stars, a genetic code that reads like language, a cell too complex to assemble by accident, and a mountain of serious scientists arriving again and again at questions they didn't expect to find. That isn't a costume. That's the edge of the map. And it keeps pointing in the same direction. So where does that leave you? Here's the first truth. Science has not proven God the way you prove a math equation. That was never really on the table, and anyone promising you that kind of certainty on either side of this argument is overselling. Here's the second truth, and it's more personal. You don't have to switch off your mind to take faith seriously. Some of the most careful, most trained scientific minds of the last century, Lemaitre, Hoyle, Jastrow, Collins, Flew, didn't arrive near this question by accident. They arrived there by doing their jobs extremely well. And here's the third truth, the one that actually matters at 3 in the morning, when the noise of the day is gone. If the universe had a beginning, if the numbers were tuned this precisely, if the code inside you reads like a message, then the oldest question in human history is still quietly sitting on the table. Not, can science explain everything? But, does science, followed honestly all the way to the edge, keep pointing at something or someone beyond itself? Which piece of evidence in this video actually surprised you the most? Tell me in the comments. I read every one of them. Piltdown Man was a fake mystery built by human hands to fool other human beings. The universe you're sitting in right now is not.